Okay, why don't we get started? Again, welcome. I'm Trevor Morrison, the Dean here at NYU Law, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the inaugural Jerome Manning Tax Salon, which is presented by the Graduate Tax Program here at NYU Law. I think I don't need to tell this audience that our Graduate Tax Program is really one of the jewels in the crown of the law school, really field defining ever since it was established in the 1940s. It was the first and is still the foremost program of its kind in the country, and its graduates are legion and really leaders in all areas of tax practice and well beyond that as well. Our trustee, Jerry Manning, from the class of 1952, is an example of the kind of outstanding leadership in the profession that graduates of this program have gone on to provide. And he's been a wonderful supporter of the law school in myriad ways as well, teaching estate planning for decades as an adjunct professor of law, supporting the law school as a longtime member of our Weinfeld program, himself a leading tax lawyer, the author of Manning on Estate Planning, now in its 7th edition. Jerry is just a model of what our graduates can achieve in their careers and of the kind of impact they can have on this law school in giving back to it. And we are deeply grateful to Jerry and so pleased to be able to name this salon after him. You're going to hear in a moment from Brant Hellwig, who's an LLM 2000 graduate of our program. Brant joined the law school just this past January as a professor of tax law and is the new faculty director of the graduate tax program. We are thrilled to have Brant aboard. He's going to be a spectacular leader, already is, of our graduate tax program. And so we're very pleased today that our inaugural Jerome Manning Salon is going to feature a conversation between Brant and our distinguished graduate, Chuck Rettig, LLM 1982. And he will be introduced by Brant in just a moment. But again, I want to thank all of you for being here with us this morning, and I will turn things over to Brant Hellwig. Take it away, Brant.
Great. Thank you very much, Trevor, for kicking off our event and for your remarks honoring NYU alumnus Jerome Manning, who has made this and future tax salon events possible. Even though I just recently rejoined the NYU community, I too would like to thank Mr. Manning for his tremendous investment in the graduate tax program at NYU through his remarkably long tenure as an adjunct professor in the estate planning field. 40 years contributing to the development of our students and to the strength of our program overall is quite a remarkable legacy. For our inaugural installment of the Jerome Manning Tax Salon, I'm thrilled to introduce Charles P. Rettig from the LLM class of 1982. Allow me to provide a brief bio. Mr. Rettig is the 49th Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. As Commissioner, he presides over the nation's tax system, which collects more than $3.5 trillion in annual tax revenue, and that represents roughly 96% of the total gross receipts of the United States. Makes me wonder where the other 4% comes from. Mr. Rettig manages an agency of roughly 80,000 employees and a budget of more than $11 billion. Previously, Mr. Rettig practiced law with the firm of Hochman, Salkin, Rettig, Tasher, and Perez PC in Beverly Hills, California. He practiced there for more than 36 years. And if you're wondering what specialty Mr. Rettig had in practice, let me just tell you this. The website for the firm is taxlitigator.com. Mr. Rettig has held leadership roles in a number of professional organizations, most recently serving as vice chair for the American Bar Association's section of taxation and president of the American College of Tax Counsel. He's the founder of the UCLA Extension Vets Count Scholarship Fund and active in the Wounded Warrior Project Advanced Guard. Chuck, welcome, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and, really the honor to be the first with respect to the Jerome Manning's salon. He was there when I was there, and I was the kid in the hallways that would sort of get out of the way for all of the big legends that would come down the hallway. And I don't consider myself a big legend. I still consider myself, a kid, and a kid who's sort of passionate about tax, and all of that started in those hallways.
Wonderful. And thank you for your quick response and your willingness to be a part of our event today. So I've got a range of questions I wanted to discuss with you this morning. Given that you're an alumnus of the Graduate Tax Program, I wanted to start by taking you down memory lane a little bit to talk about some of your experiences here. Then I've got a few questions about your time in private practice, and lastly, several questions about your current tenure as Commissioner of the IRS. All right, so I'll go ahead and get things started. Chuck, I've heard you mention in prior interviews that you're a first-generation college student, and I was wondering if you could describe your path to the NYU tax program in particular, and how your education here at NYU has served you in the profession.
We're influenced by things that occur in our life. And, I consider myself among the most blessed people on the planet for having really a varied life, but in some ways, very simple life. My father came from Eastern Europe. As many know, Eastern Europeans don't necessarily see education in college as the path forward, but rather learn a skill, use your hands, learn a skill. And in our family, if you learn a skill, the concept that we knew was you'll always have a sack of potatoes under the kitchen sink, which meant we will always be able to eat. And that was the barometer that we grew up in. And so I saw myself going at some point going to go into business. I'm number 3 of 3 children. Neither of my parents nor my brother and sister, college wasn't for them. And so I am the first, and my mom wanted a child to go to college. I am a Vietnam era person, if you will, that everybody, like I usually say, every male 2 years ahead of me went to Vietnam. Every male did not come back. And I knew in high school I was going to Vietnam, and then the war basically shut down in 1972, 73. I got out of high school in 74. And so I went to college really to please my mom, but there was no concept that I was going to graduate from college. It was going to college so that my mom would be proud that she had a child who attended college, if you will. And at that point, I was economics, accounting major, started getting interest in certain areas, and moved on to law school. And in law school, when I talk about influence, I had a tax professor in law school who walked in first of every class with a huge aloha, right? So you're thinking you're going into this complex, difficult environment, quote unquote tax. And you had a professor who took the tension out of the room the minute he set foot in the room. Mm-hmm. And how you can combine those two is kind of an interesting thing. It's easy to come in the room and be technical right out of the box, but you're going to lose half the class. You've got to get people willing to listen. And that was my entire career, really, getting people willing to listen, whether it's a judge, whether it's somebody at Department of Justice, whether it's somebody at IRS, and learning how to use people skills to get to that point. But those people skills by that professor got me to the point of wanting to know more about tax and how this works. And so beyond that, it's, Brant, is really quite simple. If you want to know about tax, you have to go to NYU. You have to get your LLM. If you want to be a great tennis player, you play with the absolute best people that you can. Not that you think you're maybe capable to be on the court with them, but get on that court and you'll know more than if you get on a court with people who are, like yourself, learning. So the idea of going to NYU, get an LLM in tax, was really to learn from the best. And I think something unique about NYU is it's not, so to speak, just the professors, but you learn from the other students, your colleagues, the interactions with the students. And when I was there, a third of the students had been in government, in tax, either IRS, Department of Justice. About a third of the students in my class had been with large law firms, or nowadays it would be the accounting firms as well as the large law firms. And a third were like me, coming right out of a law school environment. But learning from your colleagues and understanding that you can learn from your colleagues, don't just face forward, but listen to what people say, really developed quite a bit of a passion for me. And so my path to NYU is actually quite simple. And I will be the first to say, and I've said it throughout my tenure as Commissioner of the IRS, I would not be sitting here today as Commissioner of the IRS and a lot of things we're going to talk about had I not gone to NYU, had I not gotten my LLM in tax, had I not been influenced by the professors and other students, colleagues, if you will, that were there. And I graduated 40 years ago, and I am routinely introduced with a lot of other things that I might have done in the past 40, but usually the crowning touches. And he went to NYU, and the tax conferences, people know exactly what that means. Is there's some degree of substance. I was on the court, if you will, as a student with the best, so I must have picked something up. And you will have that card. Those of you who are there now or recently from NYU, you'll have that card the rest of your life, and it's not a card you have to play. People just know it. So it really, is a set the path forward.
Great. And Chuck, could you tell us, if you remember, like what were some of your more meaningful or formative experiences here in terms of classes, professors, or even some of the experiences you had with your classmates?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of sleep when I was there. I saw it as a challenging endeavor. I absolutely wanted to absorb as much as I could absorb. And so, maybe had I gone to NYU from government or gone to NYU from, 5 or 6 years in private practice, it might have been different. But I was really trying to absorb everything. I was trying to absorb tax. I was trying to absorb how to practice, and they call it a practice of law, which means it's not just use your memory skills to learn the statutes or learn the recent cases or whatnot. Learn how those are important and then bring those into, in this context, your professional career. So the practice of law, and specifically the practice of tax law, is what came there. A professor I will never forget, really an amazing person and an awesome professor, obviously, Charlie Lyon. Charlie Lyon was all that, and we knew it as students. And you had somebody who was, off the charts intellectually, off the charts with a passion for tax. And he would tell stories of, sitting around with Jerry Wallace, who was one of the founders, right, of the program. And Charlie rode his bike to school. Charlie made time for everybody. And Charlie talked to us as though we were his equivalent. We knew we weren't, but when he talks to us, and he had the sense of not to show us how smart he was, but to try to help us learn what he knew beyond the code, beyond the regs, beyond the case law, if you will, but what he knew about really life and life in tax. And so it was easy to see, and I saw that. And so from a perspective of really how I left NYU as a person and as a tax lawyer was the concept of respect everyone. Understand that everybody doesn't lead off with, knowing everything there is to know, but help them become all they can become. And if I had to pick a person, certainly a person at NYU that helped me get into that direction, it certainly was Charlie Lyon. And, folks who have had him know exactly what I'm saying. But to get respect as a student, and I was from LA, I'm still from LA, if you will, I live in Washington. But I'd never been to New York City until I moved to New York to go to NYU. And so I was also dealing with absorbing, New York City at that point in time. It's different today, let me just say, than it was back in 1981, 1982. But to have a professor who you knew was all that, who talked to you as, Chuck, come on in, let's talk, right? And the conversations didn't start with, I think he was tax procedure, at least one of the courses I took with him. It didn't start with tax procedure. How are you doing, living in New York? How's your family taking with this or that? And then you move into it. So I learned how to be a better person from Charlie, as well as how to be, the best tax lawyer that I could be. And in part, I wasn't intimidated, but I was. But he made it comfortable to be able to ask the questions that I needed to ask. And so sometimes people hold back on not wanting to look like, well, you're going to think, Brant, I should know this. And I will tell you today, that skill set is probably as valuable as any other skill set that I have. In IRS and as commissioner, there's, certainly more than 100 lanes that come into my office every day from, we're in filing season. We also do cyber, and we do cyber for the United States government. And we have, as many criminal special agents as any organization other than I think the FBI. And so we are everywhere. We're the people. We interact with the big corporations and the super big corporations. We interact with people who live remotely, who don't have broadband. We interact with people who are not comfortable in English, and this law will go into some of this.
Mhm.
The ability to say, if somebody was to come into this role and say, don't worry, I got this, that would be a disaster going forward. The ability to get folks here, the career folks, comfortable saying, well, this is how we do something, and then kind of challenge that, which you will automatically get in life. I think, looking back really puts the agency in a better place, and it makes all of us comfortable. So that's sort of my Charlie Lyon piece.
Okay.
Other folks, Brant, who were in the hallway at the time, and to me, everybody that's gone through NYU as a student or certainly as a professor is a legend, right? But Brooks Billman was more or less brand new when I started there. Larry Locken had come in from Florida. Obviously, Jim Eustace, nobody did not know who Jim Eustace was. And you could feel in the hallways when, Professor Eustace would come down the hallways, and I mean that in a really positive sense, right? It's like being on the court, even though he just walked by, you thought you learned something, right? And Steve Gardner, I went to a graduate tax program reunion, and Steve Gardner was up on the podium talking with Jim Eustace. And I can tell you what went through my mind was whether I should or shouldn't go up and introduce myself. I'm sure he had no idea who I was. And so I made that comment to a person sitting at the table, and that person said, yeah, I had him from a class for a class, and I'm still afraid of that guy. So in a good way, right? But you kind of get the sense.
Sure. And Chuck, one of the things we were chatting about before the webinar started was, so you graduated in 1982. A series of really significant tax legislation comes down the pipe in the early 80s, culminating with the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And you were commenting on not so much learning the specifics of the statute at a given time, but how you learned the meaning behind the provisions that you were studying, and were able to roll with the range of statutory changes that were soon to follow. I thought I'd just see if you could comment on that.
Yeah, you learn the why. Why does it say what it says? You have to learn the why to understand why it's there, whether it's the code, also, cases. You could be very influenced by the outcome of a case, but why did the case go there? I can take 3 cases into court, or I can appeal 3 cases to a circuit court, and I can get you 3 different results based on what the judge is, or what the panel is, what's going on, and how I present it. And so why cases end up where they do, why the statute says what it does. And like I said, Brant, if I got out in 82 from NYU, there was an 82 Act, an 84 Act, an 86 Act, right? And the hits just kept on coming. If I essentially memorized what the code says, I would not become the tax lawyer that I was trying to become, but by asking the why. Why did they change this code section? What are they trying to accomplish? And does it really say what maybe Congress intended it to say? Because on the outside, you challenge codes, right? When it's appropriate to do so, you challenge what it says, and sometimes you have to do that by analogy and stuff. So and I get it, as a student in a graduate tax program, it's difficult enough just to learn what what tax is, what the code sections are, what the cases and the rest. But you really need to take this to that next level. Why does it say that? And I will tell you, through years of practice, and I hear myself sounding like I think I'm the old man. I'm still 8 years old, right? Satchel Paige, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? I have 2 children who are 31 and 33, so I'm 34. They're pushing me up. And I don't want to be the guy who comes back and pontificates on this. But I will say, looking back, you can give me any new tax statute. And when I start with, why would this be there? What's the purpose for this? Asking the why, I can absorb it a lot better. And when you need it, whether you're on your feet, in an appellate court argument, you're on your feet in a courtroom, you're talking to a client, or you're talking to, in whatever the scenario is, when your mind is helping you with the why, you can actually bring in all the other related cases, statutes, thoughts, planning opportunities. So it's the practice of law, the practice of tax law, but learn to get to the why. Why is this as it is? And let me speak to a couple of you, because I made a comment to Brant that at NYU, I was the wallpaper. I was the guy who wanted to absorb everything that went down, and was hugely impressed by the people around me. And then and now, never saw myself ending up in the position that I'm in, but I give it to learning. And I'm saying this specifically in a certain way, learning from great people who are also great professors, who are also great tax lawyers. And I use it in that direction because you've got to start with your own skill set, take that into what the professors and your colleagues are saying, and then bring that home to make yourself the best that you can be. And, it's probably more steps than that. But I didn't leave NYU with the idea that someday I'm going to be sitting in the corner office in Washington, D.C. for IRS and all the rest of that. And, I will say, I'm very comfortable who I am, but I'm equally comfortable who I'm not. And that will help you in your legal career as well. Don't try to be something you're not. It's okay to not know everything. And, when I mentioned the cyber world, since I've been on board at IRS, if you saw the recent seizure associated with the couple in New York, I think it was listed as largest virtual currency seizure in the history of the United States of America, $3.5 billion. It's actually more than that. That was our case. That was IRS cybercrimes. And while I've been here, IRS Cybercrimes Unit has taken down the largest child exploitation site in history operated in the dark net. We've taken down financing sites for Hamas, Al Qaeda, and ISIS. And those obviously aren't things that I know how to do, but I do know how to appreciate the people who are in those trenches, who are giving that time. And those are the kinds of where I start first with great people, and you move it to the rest. So be able to adjust your skill set and stay flexible with where you think you're going to be. And, a few years from now, I'll come visit you. You'll be sitting in my chair.
Excellent. All right, Chuck, I'd like to maybe just touch on your time in private practice. We had this a phenomenal career representing taxpayers. Again, practicing law for 36 years with the same firm, something that's really almost unheard of today, that level, that degree of longevity with the same firm. But I know you devoted your time to representing clients who were entangled in some of the most high-profile IRS enforcement initiatives. I thought I'd just ask you, to speak to your time in private practice. What did you find most enjoyable, most challenging, maybe some of the most interesting cases? It would be wonderful just to hear about your experience representing taxpayers over that significant length of
I represented everybody. I wasn't the big or super big corporate lawyer, but beyond that, I represented everybody. I am and was passionate about practice, and I am certainly passionate about helping people. I had a huge privilege to be able to practice with people who cared, who were not led by a client, who would stand up to a client. And from day one in our office, I knew I could stand up to the client. Every one of the clients that you'll run into is not necessarily an angel. There's an economic need that they want to have you support, a position that they want to take. And often, certainly in large law firms, often the lawyers and the tax lawyers are the no people. So they're not the first people brought into a deal or whatnot. They're brought in. And at that time, could be difficult to say, this doesn't work from a tax perspective. You are who you are. You will build your own reputation. Reputations are earned, and they're earned every day. And if you let it go, very difficult to get back. Tax in the United States is a small community. I know thousands of tax lawyers and certainly thousands of tax accountants. And, if somebody stepped on a landmine, whether intentional or otherwise, it doesn't help their reputation. And you want to be all you can be. So and this is going to be difficult for those of you who haven't been in practice yet, but you want to be the person. If no is the right answer, no matter how many people, no matter how impressive their careers are and how loud they may be in a room, if no is the right answer, you've got to put no on the table. You've got to say, we can't do this, or, there's ways you could say it, right? I think this needs to be explored further before we authorize anybody to go down in this direction or that direction. And certainly I had opportunities where I was brought in on a case and I would be the no guy. And I can recall as I'm sitting here, more than a few where people would say, you know, somebody would be with a firm for quite a few years and the firm calls me in to assist. And I would say, you guys understand that's not going to work, right? And it's not going to go in a good direction. And when you get well, you're going to need to talk to the client about this because, you know, it'll jeopardize our relationship with the client. Sure, put me in, you know, I'm good. I'm going to speak from my heart, my knowledge, my experience, and really for what I think is the benefit of the client, not to let the client get into a difficult position. Fighting the government on what might be at best a questionable position is not good for many clients. So I represented a lot of wealthy individuals. I represented a lot of family type LLCs and whatnot for wealthy groups of wealthy individuals. And I represented a lot of people who going to litigation, because that's when it becomes public, was simply not an option. And certain things, litigation was going to be the only way out of this particular situation. And so you do have to come in, you have to talk to the client. And I will tell you that the vast majority of folks who are my clients on the outside are personal friends today. And I spoke my mind. You know, I didn't worry about losing a client. I didn't worry about losing a referral source. I worried about why I was hired, which was to help the client, which did not necessarily comport with the business model we might have had for the firm to have a long-term kind of relationship with a wealthy client. But I will tell you that looking back, stepping into the client and facing up to, you know, Captain America, because many of these folks were household names, I will tell you that they appreciate the straight talk, right? Rather than, you know, the historic term, yes, man, right? Don't be a yes person just because. Now, your first, you know, year in practice, temper that, right? A little bit. But I will tell you, looking back, you know, so 36 years on the outside, 4 on the inside. And you know, I'm on a statutory term with IRS that expires this year. And the best I can say to you is the rest of my life, will look at my wife, look at my children, and we'll look at each other with pride, knowing that every day I gave it the best and we tried our best. Certainly made mistakes, but they would be educated mistakes because we're trying to get somewhere. Definitely at IRS, we've got a lot of responsibilities. A huge pleasure in practice was what the relationships with the clients was the vast majority of the wealthy people I interacted with came from nothing. And when you see people who have good fortune, whether it's, you know, they've got a PhD, you know, from MIT, or whether they, you know, dropped out of school in the 9th grade, and I had them all, right? At a point in their life, they will turn to what can they do for others. And more often than not, it's others who don't even know that these clients existed. I had the really great privilege of rebuilding certain communities on behalf of clients in an anonymous manner.
Oh, wow.
You know, helping people, helping real people, and going in there. And, you know, what I found from the clients, the ones who were really self-made, they went without at some point in their life. They recognize more than maybe a lot of other folks, the benefits they can bring to help. And, you know, the ability to do a lot of these things. I don't think these folks would have done it if life was easy for them. But when they get to a certain point, and this is going to be one of my asks of all of you, you're busy, you're going to be more busy. You're not going to think you have 10 minutes to do something, but you'll figure out your professional career. When you get to a comfort level in your professional career, look around, look for the people who, for whatever reason, are less fortunate that you can lend a hand. At a minimum, we can all lend a hand. You know, you walk down the street, a nod or a smile to somebody you don't know. But I will say, I'm proud part of a military family. My son is a major in the United States Army. He's a medical officer. He's deployed twice. If you're in the airport, particularly when you get around holiday season, you give, you know, somebody in uniform a nod or a smile, it goes a long ways. They didn't go in to get that nod or smile, but they'll be where our country needs. And then the other part of it is in tax, you'll learn a lot when you get into and figure out that you have the time, but whether it's low income taxpayer clinics, even VITA, there's a military VITA, there's a lot of lanes that you can take your knowledge, your skills, and I think passion into, and then bring it back to your professional career. You'll be in a room and you'll say, well, you know what I did this weekend? IRS had this sort of open house and I went in and volunteered and I represented taxpayers against the IRS on a pro bono basis. The tax court has these programs, right? You can go in on a pro bono basis and represent an unrepresented person. If you want to go home at night and tell your family, guess what I did today? Amazing. Mm-hmm. You will learn from the experience about being a person. You'll learn about being a tax person. If you've never litigated a case or never argued a case, it's a great avenue. The judges, tax court, there's no jury, you just get the judge. The judges are very receptive when folks come in. And then when you show up in your office on Monday with, all the legends, and we used to talk about people who were legends in their own mind, right? Which is not necessarily saying they're legends, but you know what I mean? Lawyers earn their reputations, good, bad, and indifferent. But then when you show up on Monday and somebody says, what did you do this weekend? And you drop that into the room, trust me, they know you went to NYU, but you just told them what type of a person you are. And I will tell you, I was in charge of hiring at the firm, and a lot of hiring partners, a lot of firms. And the right to get off the elevator for an interview in our firm was what's on your resume. The people we hired were the ones who, we might want to go to lunch with, or frequently I'll say, the person you want to go have a beer with is the person who cares about others. And that type of thing makes you a better person, a better tax lawyer experience. And if you have to look at the personal interest, other people will give you respect for the fact that you took your time and went and did that. And, there's a 1,000 opportunities. Brant, as you know, you've been very engaged in a lot of this, but, and I particularly, we're blessed. We live in the United States. And, I always say I won the biggest lottery anybody could ever win. I was born to 2 United States citizens in the United States. And from then it was mine, at that point, it was mine to lose, right? And I think most of you are aware, I know Brant is aware, my wife came into the country as a refugee from Vietnam. And she was on a boat for 9 days, 7 days without food before they were rescued. 101 people on a 27-foot boat, and then a refugee camp, and ultimately came here. And I'll frequently say is, I'm the first commissioner who has son or daughter, active duty, United States military, a wife who was a refugee. And I will absolutely tell you that before all that, I thought I was sensitive. Through those experiences and interactions with them, I found out how insensitive I was. And, I'll fast forward to a point. We have done more for underserved communities in 4 years than the IRS did in 40 years. And certainly in the language area and the rest, we had some benefits with respect to the economic impact payments and whatnot that we issued. But, a month ago, I would have told you, I think I'm getting to the point where I'm sensitive. By the way, my wife says I still have potential. So, maybe there's a future. But on the sensitivity that, there's always more to learn. And if you have a big boat and you're proud, don't tell people you have a big boat, because tomorrow a bigger boat's going to show up in port and you're going to have to explain something. So I thought I was sensitive. A month ago, IRS launched, and we're very aggressive in getting as many languages and whatnot out. IRS materials in Spanish Braille. My first question to the people here was, so Braille is in different languages? I'm a kid from LA. I'm very language sensitive. And, my wife's history and all the rest of that. I didn't know that Braille is in multiple languages. And that's how insensitive I was, even at a point in time where I've pushed this agency hard for us to get into those spaces. So when you think you know it all, whether it's tax or languages, remember there's more to learn, and you can help. So this part of, what really excites me about, Brent, talking to you and talking to everybody today is from day one, the tone here at IRS when I got on board is help us help others, right? And it's a pretty simple ask. I've covered some things that tax lawyers can do, and the feel good part of it, and the ability to sleep at night knowing that you've touched a lot of people in a really good way And I, on the outside was a tax litigation lawyer, right? And so the opportunities through being a tax lawyer, and you were held in very high regard. You walk out the door with an LLM in tax, people know it and they expect you to know things. Play the human card with your tax card and make a difference, help us help others. And I think that when I look back, and I'm not done in life, but when I look back, the things I am most proud about come from a combination of private practice and being commissioner and the ability to touch so many people. IRS touches more Americans than any other organization on the planet, public sector, private sector. And through the pandemic, as horrific as it was or is, we've been able to actually cast the IRS, if you will, in a light that's something different than tax collection, tax administration. And by the way, tax administration, you're part of this, right? It doesn't belong to the Department of Justice, doesn't belong to IRS, Treasury. It belongs to all of us, and it's a privilege. It's not a responsibility to have to dig in and do what we need to do. And I'm a pretty informal, simple guy. Somebody gave us the keys to make it better for everyone else. We did not see the pandemic coming on board, but the pandemic allowed the IRS in about 18 months, we distributed over $1.5 trillion to Americans in need. And Brent, kind of fast forwarding to something that I'm going to tuck in here, how is that important? At a point in time where for most people, I think this has been the most difficult time of their lives, and we hope it, we pass it, and it is. But there've been the economics, and I was an economics major. The economics is important, so we distributed, whether it was $600, $1,200, or $1,400 in EIP payments. Think of this part of this, and this is, becoming more sensitive. We partnered up. IRS partnered up with over 400 homeless shelters around the country to get payments to unsheltered homeless people. By definition, they don't have a place where we can send a check. And so we partnered up with the shelters, and thousands of unsheltered homeless people received checks. Now, $600 or $1,200 is not going to make that person no longer homeless. But the other side, the non-economic part of this, what happened in that lane is the unsheltered homeless person reached out and touched a door of a shelter, at which point the counselor to the shelter gets engaged to do what they're trained to do. And I absolutely guarantee you that there are thousands of people who were homeless and unsheltered before the pandemic who are in a better position. I'm not talking economics. I'm talking they received a lot of assistance, emotional and otherwise, that was not coming their way. And when I talk to folks in the IRS, and I do every day, I said, take that home, right? Why are you proud to work at the IRS? And, drop on people. Do you know there's thousands of people, real people, right? People we care about who are better today because IRS was given the privilege to do these things. So we don't talk here in terms of brick and mortar institution, necessarily tax. Yes, we're, the tax administrator for the country. But IRS really, I think if you talk to most employees, they would tell you this, we're a group of people who care about people, care deeply about the country. We have a mission that's incredibly important. I think our fiscal 21 gross revenue was $4.1 trillion, which is 96% of the gross revenue of the United States of America. You want this agency to be successful. You want this agency to be in the communities, on the streets, operate in the languages that are most convenient for people, and that they accept, right? And then the back end of that is know that the United States government doesn't build bridges, it doesn't build aircraft carriers, it contracts that out. So I like to say when I talk to the military, and I do pretty frequently, when you get on that airplane, thank an IRS employee, because 96% of that went through our hands. And the 4% is customs duties. I'll pick on customs and say, when you're 4% and the other person is 96, but this goes into, this is how I talk when I go up to the Hill, and I'm up on the Hill all the time. I have 3 more hearings in the next 30 days, and I had 2 within the last 3 weeks, right? Senate Finance, Ways and Means and such. And I come at it differently. I come at it that somebody recently said something about, they support me or support IRS for technology. And then the person said, and I'm a Republican. And my response, I think, caught the whole room off guard. Sometimes I say things and I could see senators and members of Congress kind of go, did he just do that? And my response was, I'm from California. California has an undeclared category. I'm undeclared. I'm not Republican. I'm not. And this was my answer. Thank you. I appreciate that. California has an undeclared. I'm undeclared. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat, but I am a proud American. And I said, you're all proud Americans. You should all be telling me you support technological advances and funding for the IRS. And then now let's come back to the 96%. And keep in mind, I know when I got out of NYU, I would not have been comfortable throwing those darts around, if you will, in a Senate finance hearing. And so it takes some training and experience. But in this space, I know I'm right. And this country needs a successful IRS. And we have our tax responsibilities and we take them incredibly seriously. And I'll tuck you in and I'll get off of this for you. But we are very soon going to have the largest call center of any federal agency, and it's located in Puerto Rico. It's located in Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico had 2 hurricanes and an earthquake and 700,000 people without jobs, and a lot of people left Puerto Rico for a better world. We went in there because of that, and I brought federal jobs into Puerto Rico. It's a longer story, and it's been incredibly successful at the people level. The other part is we're in the Mississippi Delta. We're in the Mississippi Delta, in a part of the Delta that has multiple generations of unemployed that the world has passed by. And we went in there, and we're in there with federal jobs. It's about a 6-year project, but we paired up with a 4-year institution, a 2-year institution in high school for VITA. And we're going to give job skills to people, and we're going to give them back everything that people get when they get their first job or they have their career. And we're very proud about that. And so that's not tax training. Tax training got us to the point where this commissioner, and I'm a public school kid out of LA. I am not special, but I care. And I think everybody here cares. And it starts with the confidence you get when you go through a program like NYU, right? Would I be here if I went through a different LLM program? I'm not sure, but I knew when I walked out the door and went back to Los Angeles, I knew I had something special in my pocket, and that was my degree in tax from NYU. And I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you all associated with an NYU event. I'm saying this as I recall getting on that plane and looking at my degree and going, look at this. To me, and to my family, it's the Harvard medical degree and the postdoc degree and the this and the that. And I'm not special. I was in your seat. I walked in your hallways. I was confused if every course is easy, good luck to you, right? But there's such a variety of courses. You should be confused by some of these, and you should be comfortable going in and asking, Brant or asking, a Charlie Lyon, hey, can I talk to you? And one of the special things is to have professors who want you to know this, want you to learn this, want you to ask the why, and make yourself a better person and a better tax lawyer. So, Brent, I've way overspoken on probably what you consider to be a slow pitch, and let me take a swing, but apologize on that.
No, well, you covered a number of things that I was going to touch on, but let me follow up on just a few of those things. You mentioned that we all have an interest in the successful operation of the Internal Revenue Service. We certainly have been successful in advocating for increased funding of the service, and one of the initiatives is the hiring of a range of tax attorneys to help in litigation of sophisticated issues, sophisticated transactions. And I've heard you say that strong, robust enforcement of our tax regime actually benefits everybody, including taxpayers. I just wanted you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, enforcement supports compliant taxpayers. So the vast majority of taxpayers are compliant, or as compliant as they know how to be, right? And enforcement goes for that next group of folks who might be willing to take a risk or might not do as much homework as they should do. A tax return, a Form 1040, is absolutely not an offer to negotiate with the government. It's signed under penalty of perjury. It has some very specific yes, no boxes. Look at what's transpired in the 2019, 20, and 21 returns with respect to the question on virtual currency. That was modeled after the question on Schedule B dealing with an interest in foreign accounts. But the virtual currency question started out on Schedule L, which was kind of like an other income schedule. And it moved forward where it's right now, right under the name and address, right? So I used to say on the outside, you could look over the fence, and you have to on the outside to see what IRS is doing. Look over that fence, and the fact that it got pulled up to the front, and the fact that it's a yes/no question, I don't think you need the graduate degree in tax from NYU to answer yes or no as to at any time, did you have any interest in, an account? Now, certainly lawyers can, dance on the head of that particular pin and come up with an opinion, but the average person should not be willing to test and answer no to a question that's pretty straightforward. Why is there the incentive there? Because we know the compliance, the level of compliance in virtual currency transactions is suspect, and you should anticipate that we're going there. I believe that fair warning to everybody is appropriate. Have people, give them the opportunity to report and then move forward in a compliant way. But we need to support the people who wake up in the middle of the night wondering, did I get that right? And they do their homework. The other side of that is the folks who do their homework that don't get it exactly right should be relieved of penalties. It's a case-by-case thing, so don't quote me, and I don't want to be in some court case. Well, commissioner said, right? But facts, most penalties are fact specific. But I think right now, and I've said this a lot, if I was talking to somebody at IRS about penalty relief or some kind of relief, I'd open up about COVID, right? I wouldn't open up about the facts. I wouldn't open up about the law. I would probably ask the IRS person, are you doing okay? You getting through COVID okay, right? That kind of a conversation. Bring COVID into the room, because our folk, it hit us too. We're IRS and federal agencies are not immune. It hit us to humanize the situation. But I will tell you, if you look at a lot of the indictments are COVID related. There were a lot of people who created fake entities and hit up the PPP loans for tens of millions of dollars. Chuck Rettig believes those people should go to prison for a lengthy period of time. You have a good program, PPP relief and retention credits and all the rest that was designed right. IRS is the gatekeeper to go after the people that abused that privilege that this country gave to everybody to try to, one, keep them economically solvent, but also to show them the emotion that, you are blessed. You're in a country run by people who care about you. And by the way, we're going to distribute, whether it's a economic impact payment, child tax credit payment, or whatever. And we do care. The people in the government care, people outside the government care, but enforcement is critical to maintaining the semblance that we have of civil rule to help fund the government, right? Congress passes, the code, and then the president signs, and it's enacted, and it is what it is. The privilege to be in a country, and we had a flag in our house when I grew up. I'm surrounded by flags here, and I'll quickly tell you, I always knew, red, white, and blue. I knew the number of stripes, the number of stars, and all that. For the importance of the IRS to the country, and the IRS is important to the country, 4.1 trillion, 96% gross revenue. When I got on board, this agency didn't tell its story well, that the flag and red, white, and blue were not part of our logo. We had a logo, and we still have a logo, but we brought the flag front and center, and there were only two agencies that didn't have the flag as part of their logo. In part, Chuck, how did you figure that out? I have a son who wears an Army uniform, and if he's in his camis, the flag's on his shoulder. If he's in his dress uniform, the flag's there. And his dad gets emotional when he sees him because dad knows what he's doing. He's supporting the country, but we didn't tell our story. Anything that you've gotten from us in the last few years, you see red, white, and blue on that. That's a public school kid from LA saying, let's tell people that we're important in a good way. And then COVID came, right? And so COVID gave us the opportunity, and then COVID fraud came. So enforcement for us is critical. And Brent, we talked about something, and I'm just going to say it as it is, and I'm going to give you where you can go and verify this. there is in the wind sometimes. The IRS focuses more on lower income people than higher income people because it's easier to do so. False, absolutely false. All experienced examiners for the IRS are uniquely focused in the high income, high wealth taxpayers. We have 6,500 frontline revenue agents who are experienced people who come out and ask the questions. Know that last year we got over 4 million partnership returns. And so if we just kept our 6,500 revenue agents in the lane of partnership returns, you can do the math and go, well, we're not going to do so well with that. But substantially every experienced examiner is in the high income lane. The rate of audit for taxpayers of high income, high wealth far exceeds the rate of audit for taxpayers under 25,000. So you'll come back and say, well, Chuck, why would you audit somebody whose income is under 25,000? Every return for somebody under 25,000 that's audited is audited because there's an earned income tax credit claim. The IRS every year delivers to Treasury, and the Treasury Secretary signs what's called the improper payment rate. It fluctuates between 17 and $20 billion a year. So we need to give our research folks enough of a look in that space so they can develop what the error rate is in that space. And so every year there's about 300,000. There used to be 500,000 letters that went out to EITC people. We get about 25, 26 million claims, about $60 billion. We send letters to what averages between 1 and 1.5% of those folks and say, you know, was this child at your home for more than 6 months, right? That's one of the questions. It doesn't come through on a 1040. So TIGTA, which is our Inspector General, issued a report, and it said for tax years between 2015 and 19, the IRS audit rates in that space for earned income tax credit was 1.6%, and then in 19 went down to 1.0%. So what do you do with the high income people? Over 10 million, the high income people, the rates are between 7 and 8%. Between 5 and 10 million, the rate is between 4 and 5%. Between 1 and 5 million, the rate is 2 to 2.5%. Between 200,000 and a million, the rate drops off significantly. What I just told you is the importance of information reporting, or where we don't have it. By and large, people up to $1 million are executives with a W-2 and some 1099 income. When you pass the million mark, we run into the entrepreneurs who have the partnerships, the LLCs, the pass-through entities. So there's more of an ability to be less compliant, if you will. So the audit rate jumps for that group. And the proof in the pudding, so to speak, 2020 data book, page 33, table 17, gives you our audit rates going back. But where people say you're auditing more poor people, and I'm not going to belabor the point, but it is a passion because the agency takes a hit inappropriately in this space. If you just look at 2021, right, or it's the 2020 book, so you just look at the 2019 data in the 2020 book, you will see we sent letters to about 1.1% of folks who between January and April 15 of 2020 sent us a return on the EITC. Know that we finished that pool by April 15. 95% of those were done because we do our best to get those refunds out immediately, right? Now move to the higher income folks. You will find, or you know if you're out there, that the higher income folks tend to file in October 15, right? The fact that there's any data that we looked at anybody who filed a return in 2021 associated with their 2020 or filed in 2020 associated with tax year 2019. The fact that there's any data there tells you one thing: that person was already under examination. So it's like 0.000 whatever percent. If you just look at those numbers and you compare them, you're going to go, yeah, IRS, you're auditing 5 times more poor people than wealthy people. We haven't even started the audits on those folks. But if you go out 3 years, and this is what we cover in the data book, where the statute of limitations is expired for those folks, you will see this 7 and 8%, 4 to 5%, 2.5%. We don't go after the high income returns who are filed in October, November, or December. We don't, right? So apples and apples is this issue. So what's dangerous with people saying you audit five times more is this agency has to earn the trust and respect of every American. Our employees live in the communities and they're part of the communities and their families are part of the communities, and they need to be proud. And nobody should be proud if in fact, when you went out to the 3-year number, it was 5-to-1 for the lower income people. It's not. It's the 1 to 1.5% range, and it's down in the 1 now, right? Compared to the 7 and 8% or the 4%. So it hits personally because I take this personally because we're trying to do the right thing here. And we have all of our resources in the high income, wealthy arenas. Watch us in the listed transactions, abusive transactions. We're about to launch with more listings. We're pretty aggressive. It's beyond belief that in 2022, we only have a couple of listed transactions, and in 2000, we had 23. It's not because we're better. It's because resources and other reasons, somebody took their eye off the ball, but we're getting back into that arena to identify those. And as you know, a listing gets us a disclosure, and disclosures help a lot. So I think we're where you would want us to be. I think if you all were sitting in my seat or the seat of a lot of career people, you'd be very proud for what we're doing and importantly, what we're not doing. But every commissioner always says we need more funding, and I'm there. But the real fact is this agency needs to know how to operate with the funding that it does get. And internally, we did not use pandemic as an answer to anything. It's our job to operate the IRS to serve everybody during a pandemic. We have to operate in the environment that we find ourselves. And I think, again, history will look back and say we did pretty well. There's a lot of talk and a lot of outside about our inventories. A lot of people use old data and know that our mail is current. We have 381,000 pieces of mail today that's unopened. We receive and open between 1 and 1.5 million pieces of mail a week. In July of 2020, we had 23 million pieces of unopened mail because we shut our facilities down to come back in socially distanced, et cetera, et cetera. One area that I'll give you, which really will tell you, and you'll see more and more of this come out as we get through the summers, but about our inventories or backlog. A year ago at this time, our error resolution service had 7.8 million matters to be handled manually. Today, a year later, we have 721,000, less than 10% for manual processing. So behind the scenes, we've done what you would hope we would do. We're headed, and I call it trending, in a very good direction. My commitment as Chuck Rettig, tax guy, as Chuck Rettig Commissioner, and certainly on behalf of the agency, is we will be what we call healthy by the end of this year. And healthy is in the eyes of the taxpayers. And so it's meeting the expectations that you all have for us to get us in a better place. But, and I get it, Brent, that we're kind of at the end of the time. So I apologize for running over. I'm going to use 2 minutes because I'm commissioner. You can cut me off. But Brent and I were talking about, kind of looking back 40 years, government and private practice. Mm-hmm. And if I'm sitting in a room with somebody who's getting their LLM, or maybe somebody who's thinking about getting their LLM, I approach life as getting my LLM, and as a lawyer, and as a tax lawyer, and as a person, that people around me were smarter, operated faster. They got it before I did. But, you go back to Winston Churchill, right? Never, never, never give up. Ask the why question. You learn more from the impossible and the difficult situations than you do for the ones that go, oh, I got it. I get this, I got that. My real ask for you is to think about giving back. You will gain experience if you volunteer with a low income taxpayer clinic, if you volunteer with some of the tax court pro bono matters. And that's not experience you're going to get in a law firm environment in your first year, but it'll make you, by year 3, you're a year 5 lawyer. And that's what happens when you have experience. The bottom line, tax is a difficult practice. Work hard. It can change every day. I used to always tell people in our office, we are responsible for the case that came out this morning, right? Mm-hmm. Know that case, but ask the why. Why is it there? IRS has a tendency to use a lot of cases and they use head notes. Don't just absorb what somebody tells you this case says or why it says that. And in tax, and in tax court particularly, There's a lot of cases that the taxpayer is representing themselves. You know, a plumber might not be the best lawyer to handle the plumber's case in tax court, and it might go in a certain direction. Tax court judges try really hard for the unrepresented, but sometimes lawyering matters. So, you know, look at the case, look how it was handled, look what it's about. And, you know, if you believe in it, and if you, hopefully you believe in yourself. And if you don't, call me, we'll sit together and I'll get you to the point where you believe in yourself. The fact that you either have or are getting an LLM in tax from NYU, I believe in you. And I know it's not handed out because it's Thursday, but you can hopefully tell I'm incredibly proud that I went to NYU, that I had the opportunity to live in New York City, that I learned from the professors, that I learned from the students. I learned from the people on the streets in New York, right? You know, we would go up to the park. We used to play football in the park on Fridays. And, you know, that was part of the experience. So get out of your room. And I know this is difficult around finals and all the rest, but try to absorb everything you can. Bottom line, NYU, there's no question. I'm not here today without NYU and all the experiences I gave you. It put me on a path, which is now 40 years ago, for the privilege and opportunity to sit here today as Commissioner of the IRS and tell you, we sent $1.5 trillion to Americans during the pandemic. We helped unsheltered homeless people touch that door handle. We told people, your government is here, your government cares about you. We launched, I'm the 49th commissioner. I won't ask what the other 48 did, but the Form 1040 is now in Spanish for the first time in history. Not because I'm fluent in Spanish, I'm close, but because a large population is not comfortable in English. This tax return filing system that the United States has, we should make it comfortable for everyone. We had over 90 million page visits on irs.gov last year on our non-English speaking pages. We got about 2 billion page visits, but over 90 million. And a month ago, as I told you, we issued a bunch of materials in Spanish Braille. So keep your eyes open, your ears open for where we're headed. My last pitch to you, Brent, is we're hiring. You know, if you're interested, we just did a hiring in the council lane. We went out for 200 experienced tax lawyers. We got 1,100 really qualified resumes. We're trying to place the 1,100. Think about being a lawyer and a tax lawyer, but don't just walk past the opportunities that lawyers have in the non-lawyer communities, whether that's in the rest of IRS, DOJ, or some other faction, or in private sector. And be happy. I am, as you can tell, I've never worked a day in my life. I'm incredibly comfortable being the person that I am. All of it started with tax. You can be a tax litigator, go down that lane, find out you don't like it, shift gears, go to something else. If you want to have a good personal life, a home life, make sure you enjoy what you're doing in your professional career. And if you enjoy what you're doing in your professional career, your home life and your professional career will be amazing. And I'm sitting here today telling you, never worked a day in my life. I have 2 kids, 2 stepkids. I live for them. I live for my wife, and they're all on this journey with me, right? We talk all the time. You know, my wife obviously lives here in DC with me, and I couldn't have had a better life looking back. And, you know, sort of the promo for NYU is my life would not be what it is and how great it has been without NYU. And did I know it when I went to NYU? Of course not. You know, I went to NYU and then I came out looking for a job as a tax lawyer, thinking I was going to be in a firm for 3 years. 36 years later, answered the phone from Treasury asking if I had any interest in being the next IRS commissioner. And I said to the person, I never really thought about it. I'm an LA kid. If you want to see my background, you can see my bio on the law firm website. And the person said, sir, I have a 5-inch thick 3-ring binder on your career. I think we'd like to talk. And I'm like, okay, you could also look at that, you know, but be who you are. And whether I got or didn't get this position, it was a privilege just being considered. And when you look at my background, I look at my background. Kids from my neighborhood went to war. They didn't all come back. None of them were offered the opportunities that I was afforded. And, you know, so the work hard is make the most of the opportunities you are afforded. And one of those is NYU. So Good deal. Sorry for going over.
Well, Chuck, those are all incredible notes for us to end on. I want to thank you for making yourself available to the NYU tax community. And also what I've witnessed is your general interest in making yourself available to the broader public through any number of events in your capacity.
Absolutely.
I think that's really admirable. And certainly proud to have you as an alumnus of the program. A lot of, the aspects of the program that you mentioned, I certainly feel a great deal of pride to be a part of it myself, and not only pride, but a sense of obligation to keep that going for our current students and our future students. So thank you very much. Since we're closing, I'd also like to reiterate our gratitude to Jerry Manning
For sure.
for his tremendous generosity in establishing this salon series, and for the broad array of support that he's provided to the graduate tax program at NYU over the years. And lastly, let me thank everybody who joined our webinar today. Thank you for your engagement, for your interest. Looking forward to seeing you at future events. So, Chuck, many thanks again. Look forward to connecting down the road, but this is really a treat, and really appreciate your time and your words today.
It was my privilege. Anytime for any of you. I'm not just talking about the NYU, the people in the building, but people outside the building. We're all one community. It's the tax community. And give it your best. Thank you.
All right.